Now, here are some history questions for you. In which year did World War II end? It's making me nervous already. When was the Treaty of Versailles signed?
If you know the answer, you might be in a minority. New studies suggest that many students are leaving school without any knowledge of the past because of the way the subject is taught.
The report from a think tank called Politeia says that history teaching is incoherent and repetitive, and thousands of pupils are giving it up.
Well, we're discussing that in just a moment. First, though, we put people in Manchester to the test to find out what they made of their history lessons.
What year did World War II end?
1945.
1945.
Well, either 43, 44, something like that, yeah.
1945.
1945. What year was the Treaty of Versailles?
What year was what?
The Treaty of Versailles.
Ooh, what's that?
I don't know.
27. 1927.
Maybe 1950s.
No, I was going to say 46. A year.
1919.
Oh.
So did you find history exciting or boring at school? What did you
I
think?
loved history actually at school. I don't know, it's just interesting, isn't it? It's like just to know where you come from and the way people lived in the past.
I enjoyed it, but I was one of the few that did. Most weren't interested. But I was lucky I had a really good teacher.
I loved history and English, they were my favourite because I felt they were intertangled together.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed history. But we had a teacher who was very enthusiastic. He loved it, he lived it.
So important, isn't it? We're joined from Cambridge by one of the report's authors, Professor Robert Tombs, and by Stephen Kettle, who's a history teacher from Poynton High School in Cheshire. Very good morning to both of you. Professor, if we could start with you first. What's the problem here? What is it that you're highlighting?
Well, we're talking about secondary school history and the way it's taught and the way it's examined. And the main problems are that the curriculum is very disconnected. People do history in little bits. There's no great sweep of the past, and also it's much too detailed. Children are taught things that they don't really need to know at enormous levels of detail, and therefore they necessarily leave an awful lot of the past out.
So are you suggesting it should be sort of, what, more linear than, let's say, doing, I don't know, the Romans or the First World War, or whatever it is?
Yes, that's right. I don't think it's much good to do, as you say, the Romans and the First World War and leave everything out that's in the middle. We would like people to have a big overview of the big picture.
So, Stephen, I don't know, the ball's in your court. The suggestion seems to be that basically the curriculum is all wrong and pupils end up with no great sort of knowledge of the overview of history.
I would disagree with that. I mean, in my school we teach in a linear fashion. In Year 7 at the moment we're doing living and believing, and we trace how ordinary people would have lived from the Middle Ages up to the 20th century. So we do it in a very long sweep. And it follows on, and then we go back and we look at power and protest, so they're getting a chronological span, and we cover all the main aspects as well.
So do you reject in its entirety what this report is suggesting? Is this done by people who are out of touch, you think?
I've read the report, and bits of it I would agree with it. And
which bits?
The bits about some of the exams, actually, but I think that's actually part of the whole examination process, not just in history.
And are there bits of it that you disagree with most vehemently? Because teachers come in for, I mean, you're in the firing line too.
Yeah, it kind of puts across, I don't like the way that history come across as boring. It kind of implies that it's not being taught very well, and actually there's a lot of creative teachers out there and who put a lot of energy into their work.
Professor, let's just pick up that point with you. You know, and from the people we saw in our report as well, a lot of it is down to, isn't it, individual teachers, how enamoured they are with their subject, how good they are at imparting that to their pupils?
Yes, it is. And we're not criticising teaching in this report. It's not about the standard of teaching. We're talking about the way the whole of history is prescribed by the curriculum. And although it's possible to do good history in schools, and although there are many dedicated and very imaginative teachers, in many cases they're having to struggle against the system, against the way that examinations impose certain tests on their pupils, and against the sort of things that they're forced to teach.
Would you, do you concur with that, Stephen?
Partly, but it's interesting how the curriculum's prescribed by politicians, and then we have people who are academics who are now, putting forward their views as professional historians. But, I question whether how often we as professional educationists who actually are on the front line, it's a completely different world that I face that, the people that prescribe the curriculum are. So it's, it's hard to say what... They might have this idealised view, but when you've only got 3 hours a fortnight across 3 years to teach everybody, it's incredibly difficult to get everything in that everybody wants.
And also make them listen to you, I guess, as well.
No, to be honest, they are genuinely interested. This week alone, we've done Titanic because of the 100th anniversary, and we've gone off the scheme of work. And the children are fascinated. I realised after half an hour, I'd been sat there actually talking. You're not supposed to talk at them for half an hour, and it was question after question after question. They absolutely adored it. They were fascinated.
Stephen Kettle, thank you very much for your time this morning. History teacher in Cheshire, and Professor Tombs, thank you both very much for your time this morning.